Yeah, a lot of people ask me how the lakes came about and how long they've been here and everything else. And yeah, this just give you a quick idea of what actually happened. Is back in about 2002, I happened to be walking down Rodin Lane North and walked down here and saw this bit of land, and I thought to myself, cool, I'll make an ideal lake there. So I made some inquiries about it and found out it belonged to Redbridge Council, and 6 years later I managed to negotiate a deal with Redbridge Council and get planning consent to build a lake. So so in 2008 we started digging, and this is the bit of land that we inherited, and this is the oak tree up by the bees, and this is a fenced up section where there used to be a clubhouse here, where it used to be an old football ground, and that's where the clubhouse was, and the kids burnt the clubhouse down, and it saw the demise of the club. The land was always very boggy, and it wasn't successful as far as keeping the fields nice, and so the club died, and so did the piece of land, and it laid there. I think it was something like 16 years it laid derelict, and yeah, all we found here was old bikes and shopping trolleys and all the sort of junk that tended to accumulates around the place. So yeah, so we pulled in, we brought in the big diggers in in 2008, and there's a funny story about this, because during the 6 years that I was trying to get planning consents and everything from the council to dig the lakes, I'd actually found a guy who was going to dig the lakes for us, and when I phoned him up and said, yeah, I've finally got permission, and he says, I'm not doing it anymore. I went, oh no. So I said, well, don't worry. I said, I've got a guy who's got the machinery and the guys, and he can do it for you. So I said, oh great. So these guys turned up in March 2008, and they came here on the morning, and they said to me, well, where did we start, mate? And I went, oh well, who's supervising here? And it was me. Then I was project manager all of a sudden. Never ever dug a lake before in my life, and we had to sort it out from there. But fortunately, the guys that was driving machines were quite clever, and they did know a bit about it. And we muddled through, and we managed to remove all the topsoil off of the land first, and made a great big pile of topsoil, and then after that we removed all what I would call subsoil, which is the soil that doesn't hold water. And once we removed that, so we had one big pile of topsoil one end of the end of the land, and one big pile of subsoil at the other end of the land, which is sort of mix of clay and all sorts of junk, and then we ended up with a big solid clay base to work with, and the land was on a bit of a gradient. So what we had to do was dig clay out of one side and puddle it up on the other side to create almost like puddingy pies, as it were, out of clay, which should hold the water. We did that, and that's why we ended up with two lakes. We had one on the top of the hill and one down the hill a little bit. I'm not saying hill, it's only about a 3 metre gradient, but that was enough to make us need to dig two lakes. So here we go, here we are shifting 50,000 cubic metres of clay, and yeah, that was some sort of effort, and we tried to dig it at a consistent depth, and the depth was about 5 foot deep in the middle, ranging to coming up to about 2 foot by the edges. And yeah, there was me with a laser level trying to get the depths right, and also had a broom handle with a paintbrush on the end and a big pot of white emulsion with water in it, I was marking lines on the ground for the guys to actually dig to, and I did that for 18 weeks, and they just dug around where the lines were on the bottom, and somehow we got it. So we got it at the end. We had to pump water out of one lake into another lake so we could run the machines. That was a nightmare. It was the wettest year on record, I think. And as we were trying to dig it, all the machines were sliding around in the mud, and oh, that was awful. I had so many panic attacks, you wouldn't believe it. But anyhow, we did manage to dig it in the end, and then of course at the same time we were building the clubhouse. So we weren't doing it by halves. We were building a lake, building the clubhouse, and here you'll see we put loads of geothermal pipe into the ground and buried it, and that creates a lot of our hot water and heating for the clubhouse itself. So that saves us a little bit environmentally speaking. So that was the lake's pretty well dug, and here's the clubhouse on its way, and then up at the end where the water comes in, water's mainly road runoff off of road in Lane North, and a little bit off of the Claybury Hills seeps through. And so what we decided to do is build a silt pit, and this is now more known as the Kingfisher Pool. But all the water runs into this silt pit before it goes anywhere else, and it goes in here, and when it fills right up, we take the water off the surface, and then it comes into the lakes here. There it is, pouring in there, water's pouring in there. And it's amazing. We put lots of this Phragmites reed in the silt pit, and that actually filters the water before it gets into the lake. So this is where the Kingfisher Pool is, and you'll see that there's a spout that's almost continuously running water through into the lakes there. And then the water then comes from, get my bearings wrong here. Here the water comes from here, which is the Kingfisher Pool, and the water comes into the Kingfisher Pool, gets filtered, runs into this lake here, and then once this one fills up, it goes across this island, which we put loads more reeds on, and it goes into this little pool here. And from this pool, it runs underneath all this soil and comes up into this lake, and it comes up into 4 points on it. You'll find, if you look around, you'll find 4 little spots here where the water runs into the lake in 4 different spots, and it fills up in this pond. And then here we've got a bank here where this island is, and in the middle of the island we've got another pool, which is a reservoir, which acts also as a stock pond. But what happens is the water then runs over the top of this island once it gets filled up, and it starts to fill this reservoir. Once that reservoir's filled up and this starts coming, then it goes out across here into the ditch, runs around the ditch, and goes back into the road in. So what we did as well was we put a 4-inch pump in this reservoir, and we've got another pipe from the reservoir that goes all the way back up to the top lake. So if we want to, I can, with a flick of a switch, I can pump the water from the reservoir back up to the top lake, which keeps the water running round and round and round the 2 lakes. So it keeps it all sort of nicely mixed up. And that's served us quite well, because so now we've got the whole ecology right, and the water quality is absolutely fantastic, especially in Lake Daisy, which is a second lake that's filtered the water. So Lake Daisy, we tend to find that the fish grow quicker and they're healthier in Lake Daisy than they are in Lake Cuthbert, which is the competition lake. And yes, so Here we go. Right, yeah, so when we when we've done all that, we put some reinforced corrugated iron, which we pushed into the ground with the digger, almost like a chip cutter into the ground to support the banks. And since then we've been forever trying to reinforce the banks where the anglers sit, because they do want to erode. It's an ongoing job. Around the little spits that we dug out here, we put lots of fencing round and debris netting around to hold back the clay whilst the reeds were growing, because otherwise we just put the reeds there without anything to stop the wash of the water. The reeds was just washed away, and so would the bank. So we had to put this fencing round as well to hold the reeds in position whilst they grew. And you can see here, there's a photograph of us here planting many of the different types of vegetation around the lakes. We actually turfed right the way around the whole of the lakes with old turfs. That was the easiest way to stop the water erosion at the time, was to actually put one turf on the water line, and the grass took there. Oh, that was an amazing job just doing that. And then this is my mate, and some of your anglers might recognise him. This is Colin from Lake John, great mate of mine, and he gave us our first fish. This is the first fish that went into the water, and he donated them to me, and yeah, I've always thanked him for that. And from those fish have bred on and on and on. Here we can see this chap here. It's my son, believe it or not. He's putting a cage in the water, because once this water went in, we had no vegetation growing around the lakes at all. You see that, what we put around there to hold the banks back while we're growing the side vegetation. And once this cage went in the water, it gave the fish somewhere to live and keep them away from the cormorants, because they had no hiding places. It was just absolutely crystal clear. They had no hiding places. So, and it was amazing the amount of fish that would go into these cages for refuge. In fact, we did actually catch a couple of cormorants with their heads stuck in the cages where they were trying to get the fish. Here's one spot here where we did get a lot of cormorant activity, and we actually put debris netting right between two bays right across, and I filled this all up with barbed wire and all sorts of stuff, which I had on ropes so I could put it out afterwards. And the majority of the fish went into this area. It's amazing how they find refuge, these fish. And we kept them there until everything started to grow and develop, and that's how it all came about. And it was about probably 2 years after that we actually started fishing it. And since then, well, things have changed enormously, but now we've got a nice fishery. So yeah, it gives you an idea how it all started. Thank you.